Good evening. This is the Vav Torah on Parashat Vayeishev. This is the beginning of a new period for Bnei Israel. In the last couple of parshas, we were dealing with Yaakov, and to a lesser extent, Esav. In this parsha, we are dealing with what's going to become the next generation, Yosef and his brothers, Yaakov's children, and they're going to be advancing to the front stage. And it begins with Yosef at 17, and it says the toldos of Yaakov, and it only mentions Yosef, why not all the other brothers. Yosef at 17 was had a certain amount of growing to do, even though he was potentially was going to be a tzaddik, righteous person. He first of all was preening himself and looking a little too much at his looks, which were he was incredibly handsome and attractive. But he then had two dreams, which he told to his brothers. The first of the dreams being that Yosef saw an image of a field with sheaves of wheat, each one of the brothers representing one, and the other 11 sheaves bowed down to him. The relationship with his brother was already difficult, because he'd been tale-bearing at his younger age and reporting things back to his father Yaakov. But they hated him even more. It wasn't just sibling rivalry. They had genuine halakhic issues, which they were debating. And depending how you looked at them, it could have a very big impact on the Bnei Israel in the future. And what occurs then is he has a second dream where he says the sun and the moon and 11 stars are all bowing to him. Now the question is, why the sun and the moon? Why 11 stars? The 11 stars are up again as siblings, and the sun represents his father. And as for the moon, it can be either looked at as one of two ways. That every even prophetic dream has an unreal element. In this case, because his mother Rachel was already dead. Some say it represented Bila or Leah, but this one, his father said, "When I asked, what are you going to rule over us?" But the brothers here were only jealous because this wasn't control of the material, him controlling them materially, but spiritually. And even though they were jealous, they did not have the same hatred and anger. Yaakov then sends Yosef to see his brothers and see how they're prospering. Now, a question is, why would he send them out unless he was totally unaware of the sibling rivalry, which seems doubtful, between him and the brothers, whether it was based on simple jealousy or other, as I said, halakhic and other issues between them. In any event, why did he send him? Have to understand, he was sending him they were at Shechem. Now, Shechem was always a area of Eretz Israel. Each area is Eretz Israel, has different potentials. The one around Shechem was always one of violence. It started with the capture of Dinah and her subsequent humbling by Shem. It involved the incident where Shimon and Levi not only wiped out Shem and Hamor for what they did to their sister, but they wiped out all the men in the town and pretty much destroyed the city later, taking women and children captives and into slaves. And here again, if what Yaakov's idea was, and if it had worked, could have worked, if he had actually seen them, and Yosef had met them in Shechem, it was possible that there could have been a tikkun, a repair between the brothers, and there could have been a solving of the problems of violence and take out the violence of the area. Incidentally, since that did not happen, in later times, the area around Shechem proportionally was known for the murders, unintentional murders, and the cities of refuge. There were more than proportion in the area around Shechem than there was anywhere else in Eretz Israel for the same reason, this propensity for violence. And then the question is, what happened? So then Yosef did not find them in Shechem. At that point, he should have gone back to his father. Should have gone back to his father, because that was the only assignment. Instead, he was wandering in Shechem, trying to find out where they were. He went beyond what his father had requested. And he was met by the man who actually was the angel Gabriel, and told him how to find his brothers, because it was part of Hashem's greater divine plan that Yosef and subsequently his family were going to have to go down to an Egyptian exile that had been predicted in the time of Abraham Avinu, his grandfather. In any event, what happened was when they saw him, they were first initially planning to kill him, and they said what will happen to his dreams then, because he thought he was going to report on them on some halakhic issue where they differed, and they felt to save the future of Bnei Israel, they needed to kill him. Yehuda, however, decided, why should we kill him? Better to throw him in this bore. Now this bore pit, that they took him off his special coat that Yosef and the Yaakov had given him. They threw him into this bore, and says the bore did not have water. Why does the Chumash have to tell us such in detail? As Rashi explains, yes, there was no water in the pit. However, there were scorpions and snakes, all of which were poisonous. Yosef miraculously survives that. And then there is a discussion, instead of killing Yosef, which means his blood will be in their hands, better to sell him into slavery than take a goat, put it on the fine suit of Yosef's, and take that back to their father. Let him incorrectly conclude that he'd been torn apart by an wild animal, and his body dragged away. That's why there was no evidence of him except the outfit. He is sold first to the Midianites, and then to the Ishmaelites, and he eventually winds up in Egypt, where he is sold to Potiphar and his wife. And there's then going to be, I'll come back to that, the next major incident. Yehuda is so upset with his siblings, he moves away from them. He marries a woman who is referred to as the daughter of a Kanani, Actually, she's not a Kanani, has two meanings. One of the 7 nations, which they would never marry. Esav was condemned by that by his parents, Yaakov and Rivka. However, what they did do was also means merchant. He had 3 sons. The first 2 died because of sins they committed when they married Tamar, who was a righteous convert, and actually the daughter of Shem, according to most authorities, one of the 3 sons of Noah, according to another source, his son. In any event, they died one heir because he did not want to affect Tamar's beauty by her getting pregnant. He wasted his seed. Then Onan, his younger brother, was asked to do yibum, which is a special form of marriage, where if a man dies childless, his widow is supposed to marry his brother, and the first child is to bring back the soul of the deceased brother. Onan refused that because he said, "What's in it for me? It's not going to be my brother. It's not going to be my son. It's going to be effectively heir." So he didn't do that, and he instead wasted his seed. Hashem killed both of them for this sin. Then Tamar, who had been married to both of them, was told by Yehuda to dress up in the widow's garb, go back to her father's house, because there was a 3rd son, which he promised her, who was very young, which he promised her he would give to her and him to marry when he grew up. And she saw that he wasn't giving the child. So when he grew up, and I'll be getting back to this a little later in the Dvar Torah, she decides herself as a woman of the night, and he thought that she was a harlot, and normally he would not have had anything to do with her, but she disguised herself so he couldn't see her, and she had always been very modest. So when she had been living in hers with him in his community, and she had an angel pool. Hashem wanted the will that they should have relations, because she realized that if she wasn't going to have the 3rd son to do yibum with, this lever at the special marriage, therefore she would do it with her father-in-law. She was doing it out of totally righteous motivations. I'll have more to say about that a little later. In any event, she asked for some proof that he'll pay her, so she gives his ring and 1 or 2 of his staff. And when he sends a sheep later in payment, can't find him. 3 months later, he's told that she's committed immoral, adulterous behavior because she was pregnant. She then, not to embarrass him, sends him this, and he was going to send her out to be burned, which was the daughter of a Cohen, and that was the ruling that Shem made. That's the halacha for the daughter of a priest. In any event, she sent with a messenger. She said, with by whom I've had received these ring and staff, is by whom I had this child. He then declares her more righteous, and she has 2 children, Zerach and Peretz, who are ultimately, one of them is the ancestor of David and Melech, by implication Mashiach and the whole Davidic dynasty. We then switch back to Egypt. is working in a house, Potiphar. However, she is attracted to him, and even though he's been blessed, Hashem blesses him, and Potiphar's put everything in charge, and his charge, and his Potiphar's whole estate. He was chief of the butchers, was prospering. She wanted to seduce him for reasons I'll explain later. He almost succumbed, but at the end didn't. And she accused him, grabbed his garment as he was running out, and she accused him of trying to force himself upon her. However, that was not the case. And normally, if there had been such a thing of a slave trying to have his way with a noble woman, he would have been killed. However, Potiphar realized it was a lie, but because it had gotten out into the public, he couldn't just ignore it. He put him in the prison, and some say he was also in charge of the prison. In any event, Shem again blessed everything that Yosef did, and he was put in charge of everything. Two of the royal servants of Pharaoh, his wine servant and his baker, were put in prison because they had done something to offend Pharaoh. They both had dreams. Yosef was able to interpret those dreams. And what happened is he predicted correctly, because the way he interpreted have an influence on it. He understood the dreams. One dream showed that in 3 days, Pharaoh's wine servant would be restored in good standing, would be serving wine to Pharaoh. The other one, the baker, in 3 days he was going to be hung, both of which came true. Then Yosef, and the failure of proper emunah and betakum, trust in Hashem, at his, and belief in Hashem, at his level, told the wine servant twice, please, I've been put here falsely. Please tell Pharaoh, so I can get out of here. It was wrong for him to do that. He should have trusted totally in Hashem to free him. So Hashem put him in for an extra 2 years, which is why we have the title of Mikates at the end, and literally then goes on to 2 years. Only then did Yosef get out of prison, came in front of Pharaoh because of dreams Pharaoh was going to have, but that I will be discussing in next week's Parashat. In any event, 2 things I would like to focus on is the whole incident of Yehuda and Tamar, and also the whole incident between Yosef and Potiphar's wife. Now, this whole incident with Yehuda seems quite strange. The way she has to dress up, to seduce her own father-in-law, who he did not know who she was. He would have never been with her if he knew it was his own daughter-in-law. And the question is, what is the greatest significance of this? Why is this whole story given in such great detail? And the reason is, the children produced from this union, as I said, were ultimately going to be those of the ancestors of David Melech and Mashiach. May he come soon. And he raises the question, if there was going to be such illustrious descendants from them, why did it have to go through this whole procedure? On one level of answering that question is that because of Satan, Yetzer Hara, evil forces, would do anything to stop the coming of Mashiach. Ben David, he decided to he would destroy him, but he never thought that they would come from such a weird, impure relationship. If you look at the other ancestors of David Melech and Mashiach, Ben David, you're going to see there was the whole incident of where there's another ancestor was Lot, who had a child by his own daughter and formed the nation of Moab. From there descended Ruth. Now, who was Tamar? Tamar was a righteous convert. She went away from idol worship, and she was, by converting, her soul was at a very high level. She gave up any possible impurities, so she was going to be she was a totally pure individual. In fact, she was so pure and so modest, Sanua, that she, why did Yehuda withhold his third son? Because he thought that she was going to be a disaster, because he thought it was something that was being married to her that caused it, and she was too modest to tell Yehuda what had actually happened, what his sons were actually doing. Now, she received Ruach HaKodesh, that when the third son of Yehuda grew up, she was not meant to have children with him, that she was meant to have children with Yehuda himself. She did so. Also, Yehuda was also was at an extremely high spiritual level, and because of that, he was able to draw two neshamas, according to what was called the klipot, impure forces. He was able to draw them out. Those were going to be his two children, because they needed, only with somebody at his level with king potential could do that. And the only way you could have it was not only with him being righteous, but where there was purity on the wife's part too. Now it's interesting, when she wound up having twins, when they mentioned the word twins in Hebrew, when they're describing her twins, it's spelled full with including the Vav, Hebrew letter Vav. When it's discussing Rivka and Rivka's two children, Yaakov and Esav, it's in a more reduced form. What's they're coming to teach us that Rivka had one righteous child, Sadik, and one Rasha, even one Esav, while both of Tamar's children were pure Sadiqim. So even though it was done through these very unusual circumstances, and a couple of sons died of Yehuda in the initially very dark situation, we're seeing Hashem preparing for the short term beginning of the kingship of Yehuda. This was going to have a major part later in the unfolding events in next week's Parsha, but over for the long term through history. Now, what about Yosef and Potiphar? Now, Yosef and Potiphar's wife, he was a completely righteous tzaddik, and in fact, we see that from the beginning of the Parsha, where we see it says, Ela total dos Yaakov Yosef ben Sheva, and he was 7, and then it goes actually 17. And what's it coming to tell us? It's coming to tell us why the Ben Yud Zion. There's two words. You look at the words Ella, Tolos Yaakov Yosef ben Sheva. You'll see the words Iti v'Yivash. Because what happened when Yosef was sold one of the higher rivers in the spiritual world dried up because of that. And it was going to lead to all kinds of implications, where and ultimately led to the death of Rabbi Akiva and his 9 other righteous rabbis, which did because of the selling. And then it says Ben Yud Zion, and what is that equal to? That's the same number in Gematria as 1217. And this is a reminder, Remez Yosef, that he was a very high level in the rep in heaven. He was a tzaddik. And what do we see from that? A tzaddik is Gito. A tzaddik, a righteous person, is very good. So we saw that. So that being the case, how is it that Yosef almost succumbed to Potiphar's wife? Because he wasn't doing it out of some desire or lust. He was doing it from a very different perspective. He saw prophetically that he was supposed to, Ruach HaKodesh actually, he was the divine inspiration, that he and Potiphar's wife weren't going to share common descendants, which in fact was the case. Ephraim and Manasseh, through they were both going to have them as grandchildren. Now, as we're going to see in next week's parsha, this whole question on who, how it works. He married Asnat. I will discuss that more in next week's parsha. However, why did he almost succumb? Because he thought it might, maybe divinely he was supposed to. He realized the fault of that he shouldn't. At the last second, when he was just about to succumb, he suddenly realized, saw an image of Yaakov, his father, in the window. He got the special divine inspiration, ran out of there. She grabbed his garment, and she then was able to accuse him. However, as we're going to see, again, Yosef's descendants, Ephraim, who's going to be the ultimate ancestor of Mashiach ben Yosef. The second Mashiach will help him gather the Jewish people. For the Mashiach ben David's going to do battle with the spiritual battle with the nations. And again, as I'm going to go in more detail next week, you're going to see the strange union. But we see, even though at the darkest times when Yosef's thrown into prison, it's all part of a larger divine plan. Same thing with Yehuda and Tamar. And what should we derive from this? That even when things, both on an individual level and a national level, as the Jewish people, we see events that look quite dark, that Hashem is ultimately caring for us and protecting us. And we'll see that illustrated so strongly in this Jewish holiday Hanukkah, which is coming up next week, which I will discuss in detail then, where things look very bad during the Greek exile, where it looked like it was going to eradicate the Torah and mitzvahs. And yet, the Hasmoneans have miraculous victories against the Syrian Greeks, which led to the ultimate saving of Torah and mitzvahs. And I'd like to wish everybody a good Shabbos and a Shabbat Shalom.